You've got the maddest story I've ever heard, and we're going to go into that. It is a completely insane story. But first, tell me just a little bit about you, because you were a police officer. What's your story?
Right. Okay. So yeah, I was a police officer a long time ago. I was a police officer back in the 1800s for about 10 minutes. That's the truth of the matter. Actually, it was back in the 1980s and 90s. It didn't particularly suit me. I didn't like being at the bottom of the pile. I think I would have made an excellent chief constable, but unfortunately, you have to be everything else before they're allowed to do that job. Having been a police officer and having family who are currently in the police, the whole notion of the police didn't have the mystique that it has with people members of the public who aren't used to the police. You know, you see a police officer and what you see is the uniform, you recognize the warrant card, you recognize the symbols of power, and you don't see the flesh and blood person inhabiting the uniform. And I know that these flesh and blood people are very, very flawed. They're as they should be. They're like you and I. You know, the police are the public and the public are the police. So when the police did approach me in 2019, I think I was entirely the wrong person to approach because one, I have no particular awe of the police. I respect them, but I'm not in awe of them. And I've also retained a very, very good level of knowledge when it comes to law, criminal law, and the principles behind law. So I was just the wrong guy for them to turn up and pick on in 2019. So that's it, really.
Yeah, take us to that fateful day.
Okay, so I was down at Tesco's car park, having done some shopping for my wife. And I received a phone call from my managing director of the company, and he rang me. He ran the company for me. He rang me and said, "H, we've had the police here." I said, "Oh, right." So naturally, you know, I operated very large machinery, etc. I thought there could be any number of things that could have gone wrong that the police might be wanting to speak to me about. Apart from anything else, you know, it's a dock. An awful lot of drugs come through the dock. People get injured and killed on the dock. We have machinery running around on roads, which are quite dangerous. So there are any number of things that the police might have wanted to speak to me about. Anyway, I rang the police officer back, and it was a chap called PC Gull who introduced himself as being a member of Humberside Police, my old force, actually. And he said that he was a community liaison officer. And I said, "Oh, very, very good. And why do you want to speak to me?" He said, "Well, are you Harry the Owl on Twitter?" And I thought, that's a bit of an odd question. I said, "But yes, I am." He said, "Right, well, there's been a complaint about some of the views that you've expressed on Twitter." I said, "Right, tell me more." He said, "Well, somebody's complained and said that your place of work is not safe for trans people." At which point I laughed. If you know anything at all about Immingham Dock, it's not the go-to place if you want to find sort of trans people. It just isn't.
Sure.
You know, aeroplanes fly over and people look up and peer. It's very, very backward, really. The notion that there would be a quotient of trans people down at Immingham Dock, or in my company in particular, just seemed to me utterly absurd. But nevertheless,
being unsafe as well, just being very unsafe.
Nevertheless, he said that, well, somebody was very concerned because the trans people in my place of work, and at the time I was employing around about 80, 90 people, I think, were unsafe, and therefore that they needed to speak to me. I said, "Well, has there been a complaint at all from anybody in my work?" He said, "Oh no, this is a complainant from a different part of the country." I thought, well, that's very, very odd. And I said, "Well, let me just give you a bit of background. I've been doing this job now for many, many years, and I've not been challenged one single time at an employment tribunal because I've come close to breaking the Equality Act or any of the acts which preceded the Equality Act. In other words, I'm a very, very good employer." He said, "Well, nevertheless, this person believes that your place is a dangerous place, and that's why I've got to speak to you." And this is when my old policing head kicked in. And I said, "Okie dokie, so is anything that I've tweeted criminal?" And he said, "No." I said, "Right, so why, if nothing that I've said is criminal, why are you ringing me?" And he said, "I need to check your thinking." And that was the moment. They were the very words he said, "I need to check your thinking."
Oh.
And I said, "Right, let me get this clear." I said, "You're a police officer?" He said, "Yes." I said, "I've not committed a crime." He said, "No, but you're checking my thinking." "Yes." I said, "Have you any idea what that makes you?" And he said, "No." I said, George Orwell's 1984, it's a dystopian novel, not a police how-to manual. And the reference to that entirely went over his head. So then I said, "Look, if there's nothing that I've done that's criminal, in your opinion, in your expert policing professional opinion, what is the thing that I've tweeted that is closest to being criminal? That if I'd just gone a little bit further, it would have been criminal. What was the thing that I tweeted which was criminal adjacent?" And he said, "Well, there's 33 tweets here." I said, "Well, in your opinion, which is the worst one?" And he said, "You did a limerick." I said, "No, I did not do a limerick." He said, "No, you retweeted a limerick." I said, "So it's not even my limerick then. It's not even I don't recall doing that, but if you say that I've done it, then clearly I've done it. But you're now checking my thinking because I've retweeted somebody else's limerick."
Have they arrested the writer of the limerick?
No, of course not. No. And it wasn't even a limerick. It wasn't even a limerick. When I eventually, through a series of disclosure, I managed to get hold of the said limerick. It wasn't a limerick. It was a piece of feminist doggerel. It was a feminist verse that said something like, "Your breasts are made of silicon, your vagina goes nowhere, and we can tell the difference even when you're not there. Your hormones are synthetic. Now let's just cross this bridge. What you have, you stupid man, is male privilege." Boom. So that was it. It wasn't even a limerick. Maybe it identified as a limerick, but it most clearly was not a limerick.
You remembered it quite well.
Absolutely. Well, sometimes I remember it, sometimes no. But yeah, it just came to me just
Repeating it in the bathroom every morning.
This was where it goes from being absurd to utterly sinister and clinically stupid. When we challenged Homicide Police as to why they felt it necessary to record and to contact me and check my thinking over the retweet of somebody else's feminist limerick or verse, the answer we got back was that this was an example of a non-crime hate incident. It's the first time that I'd ever heard of a non-crime hate incident. And the thing about a non-crime hate incident is there doesn't need to be a crime. And in fact, there doesn't need to be an incident. What there needs to be is the perception by a third party, the victim or anybody else, including a police officer, that what you have said is potentially hateful. In other words, somebody has perceived it to be hateful. And it also says no objective evidence of hate is required. So we are in the land of cloud cuckoos. We are in the land of pure subjectivism, where if somebody feels offended, that's all that it takes for the police to not only record you for non-crime hate incidents, but to, in effect, turn up at your place of work and to challenge you and to tell you that they need to check your thinking. And the rationale for this is as follows. The police say that the recording of a non-crime hate incident is necessary because it is the staging post on a 5-step journey through criminality, through discrimination, through criminality, and the getting off point is genocide. So I was on step 1 of a 5-step journey to genocide.
Is this written down? Like
Yes,
the steps?
yes, absolutely. Which, without what they call necessary intervention, I was on the genocide train, and it's a good job that PC Gull came to visit me, because otherwise I would be the next literal Hitler, going around seeking transvestites to devour. That was literally what they said. Now, it's based upon some very dodgy work of a fellow called Gordon Allport, who was writing in America in the 1950s. And to be fair to Gordon Allport, let's remember America recently come out. It wasn't very long since the end of the Second World War. It wasn't very long since we'd uncovered the absolute horrors of the genocide. And, he's a social psychologist. And I think what he was trying to do, he was making a genuine attempt to see how that had occurred. What was the cycle of violence? Because it doesn't just erupt out of nowhere. It starts with something. And what he thought it started off with was a feeling of hatred. And then that progressed through a series of stages until you finally get Auschwitz. That's all very well and good. But you can't simply transpose in whole a model written in the 1950s by an American sociologist who was studying the causes of genocide, etc., and just drop it down whole and unedited and unnuanced onto modern day policing, because it's very, very different. The notion that me retweeting somebody else's limerick, or in fact the writer writing, that I keep calling it a limerick, but you know what I mean, writing that would somehow lead to genocide. I think it's not only stupid, it's not only insane, but it's utterly insulting to the victims of actual genocide. The notion that if only we could have stopped Hitler doing hateful painting, or doing hateful rhymes or whatever, then we would have stopped the entire course of World War II. Is just absolutely bizarre. It's lazy thinking.
Failure to understand that censorship by Hitler was such a key part of it as well. I mean, censorship, that's the problem.
I agree. Now, that's how I got involved, because I challenged the entire notion of non-crime hate incidents. And one of the things that we did, because it turned out that this was one thing. This was the most egregious thing that PC Gull could find. But there were others. Eventually, through a direct subject access request, I managed to get the entirety of my offensive material. And it actually took them about 2 to 3 months for them to reveal it. So, that's a long time to be laying awake at night thinking, what the hell did I tweet? What did I do? What did I put? Was I feeling particularly in a bad mood late one night and tweeted something like, if you see a tranny, punch him? I mean, I couldn't imagine that I'd done that, because that's not me. It's never been my opinion.
Could it retweeted by accident?
Yeah, could I have? Yeah, exactly. Could I have retweeted something absolutely insane by accident? What could I have done? And of course, your friends and family are the same, because they're like, well, it all sounds a bit mad, but you must have done something. There's no smoke without fire, Harry. You must have done something. Yeah. The best thing you can do really is get off social media altogether and stop tweeting about such things. Just leave social media behind. But of course, that's what the police want you to do. They're generating a chilling effect to try and drive you and your dangerous opinions out of the social square. And I wasn't about to do that. I just thought, no, I'm not going to do that.
Can I just add to that what you just said about you must have done something? It's one of the most chilling phrases in history. And I've got family in Argentina. In Argentina, when they had the right-wing dictatorship, which was throwing people off of helicopters, drugs into the ocean and things like that, horrible things, the expression went around Argentina, algo habrán hecho, which means they will have done something. And that is one of the most chilling phrases in history. It's when people stop thinking they in a cultish way and just go, well, it's not me. As long as it's not me, he must have done something. But you didn't.
No, not anything. Anyway, after about 6, 7, 8 weeks, whatever, I eventually got the tweets back. And this is when I got incredibly angry, because there was nothing at all that I was embarrassed about having said. Not a thing. I'll give you an example of some things that I tweeted. I'd said Sheffield women know the difference between lads and lasses.
Yeah,
because they do. I grew up in Sheffield. Yorkshire people call a spade. They call a man, and a woman, a woman. They know the difference between a shovel and a spade. It's simple as that. That, the police decided, was an indicator of my genocidal tendencies. There were others. I'd been quite sarcastic. I'd said I was assigned mammal at birth, but I identify as a fish. Don't misspecies me, motherfuckers. And this, again, was seen as being an indicator that I was genocidal. But then there were some crazy ones as well.